Hi, thanks for stopping by. It's been a few weeks since I've posted because I've actually had a really bad cough, and doctor says it was bronchitis. So it's been a few weeks since I've been able to put anything up, and I'm feeling a lot better today. So I wanted to tell a story today, and I thought what I'd do is I'm going to tell you a little bit about my grandfather, Thomas Alexander Lewis. This is him right here. And this is actually his grandfather, that is Alexander Lewis, who is my great great grandfather. And for some reason, back in the days when you had your photo taken, and if you were a little boy, you didn't look like a little boy. They dressed you up like a little girl. And I just kind of get a kick out of that. But this is my grandfather. Let me get a better picture of him here for you, just so you can see that he did not spend his entire life like that. And this is kind of the way that I remember him for a lot, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. But in order to understand Grandpa Lewis, I'm going to go back a little bit and give you some of the background information. You remember a couple weeks ago we talked about Olus and Karen Johnson, who joined the church in Norway, and he was the shoemaker. And anyway, his family immigrated to the United States, and one of those was his son Peter Olson, and his wife came to the United States when his wife was quite old. Peter, and I'm drawing a blank here. 1 second. Let's go back. So we're talking here about, get that on, Petra Oman, and she married Peter Olesen, or Peter Olesen Johnson, okay, who was the son of Olus Johnson. Now, they wound up in the Logan area, and Peter and Petra had a daughter by the name of Margath. And this is a picture. Margath married Alexander's son, and that would have been, of course, now that I want it, we lose it. That would have been Thomas Craddock Lewis. There we go. And let's get this blown up just a little bit. So here you have my great-grandfather, Thomas Craddock Lewis, and Margath Oman Lewis. And she is a descendant of Peter Olesen Johnson. Okay, that's their daughter. They married and were living in the Logan area. And Grandpa Lewis, Thomas Alexander Lewis, was born, and actually Margath passed away 3 weeks later. And so I think I had always been under the assumption that maybe it was because, based on that photograph of Grandpa Lewis with great-great-grandpa Alexander Lewis, I just assumed that was who raised him. And that's not the case. He actually went back and was raised by Peter and, man, I'm just having a hard time with the name. He was raised by Peter and Petra Johnson in the Logan area. And one of the things I found was interesting, that actually Peter Johnson, there's a picture of him here. He was deaf for most of his life. We'll get the glare off that here somehow. Here, I'm having a hard time today. But he was deaf, and it says that his children really don't have a memory of him when he could hear. I thought that was quite interesting. So Grandpa Lewis was raised by his maternal grandmother. And of course, Thomas Craddock Lewis remarried, and with his second wife, they had another 9 children. And to be honest, I don't know that I've ever met any of them. So there's a whole line of descendants from Thomas Craddock Lewis that I've been able to see in Family Search. They've written a lot of really great histories and had some really fascinating stories to tell. Now, having been raised by his grandmother, of course, Grandpa Lewis, let me pull him up here. Let me get his picture back again. He was living in the Logan area where he was born and raised. Spent a lot of time working in let's get a good picture of him. This is pretty good here. Working in a candy store, and then got into the grocery business where he spent almost all of his life. There's a great picture of him there. And one of the things I found interesting that I've always enjoyed, of course, I remember only as a very little boy, Grandpa Lewis came up to visit when we were living up in the Seattle area. And this was long before his stroke, and I don't remember how old he was, or I just remember as a little boy that I remembered him being able to walk and do everything well. And I remember as I got older, I always have the memory of Grandpa's after his stroke, which made his arm and his leg very difficult to walk. But I remember visiting him through my high school and college years, and even after we were married, Trish and I visiting Grandpa and Grandma Lewis up in Logan, and him being in that chair and having lots of good stories to tell. I know stories, and actually I remember going out in his garage up there in Logan, and I found some leather straps with like a big hook on them, and that were out in the garage, and I went in and asked him about these, and he told me that those were the spurs that they would put on the fighting cocks, because they would do the cockfighting, and I guess that was quite a big thing, secretly meeting and watching those chickens just rip each other apart with those big hooks on their feet, and I guess he got involved with some of that. But the story I wanted to share was once when we were a little boy. I was a little boy. I remember Grandpa Lewis coming to visit, and I have a distinct memory of him taking me both to the horse races and to the dog races. The dog races, of course, were the greyhounds, and I still have a memory of standing next to the track, and that electronic rabbit would zip along the inside of that track, and those greyhounds were just right after him, all of them numbered. And he explained to me the concept of win, place, and show, and the idea of a trifecta. And so as a very young boy in my primary age, I was introduced to the world of horse racing and dog gambling, and I got quite a kick out of that. I remember afterwards, I don't think Grandpa got permission to take me. I remember my mom being a little bit upset that he had taken me to the races. At least that's the memory I have of that. But I remember Grandpa Lewis as always being very kind. I have a memory of him as a very loving grandfather, one who really enjoyed the outdoors. I think after his stroke, a lot of the things that he loved and enjoyed were a little bit harder for him to do. But I'm grateful for the great memories that I have of him, and especially of the sacrifices that his family went through to see that he was raised and cared for. I did find one story that basically talked about the fact that he was well loved and thought of by the entire Johnson family, and they shared the fact that they remember going and playing with him when he was a little baby after after his mother died. And this was written by one of, I think Margaret had a sister by the name of Ragna, who was the oldest sister, also born in Norway. And some of her descendants tell about going and playing with Lex, as he was known, when he was a little boy, and how he was such a kind and fun little baby to have around. So anyway, kind of an interesting story. Again, the twists and turns that you find in your family history. Glad I got it understood that he was raised by Peter and Petra Johnson, and not on the Lewis line. I think that was a mistake that I had in my own mind. The fact that Peter was deaf for much of his life. And now that I say that, I want to make sure I'm getting these names right, because I'm getting two stories mixed up in my own mind here. Let me just double check real quick on that. And that was Margaret Johnson. And that was, Peter Olesen Johnson, who was spent his life, later in life, deaf. Grateful for the example and the sacrifice and the stories that are passed on here. So thanks for stopping by. We'll get a new story up here next week, but hope you have a great week, and thanks for coming by. Bye-bye.